So at this point, the drive shaft has been removed. That can be a fidgety, exasperating job at times. The best advice I have is to keep the drive shaft parallel to its normal drive shaft line and try to rotate it out over the nut on each end, and have all the hardware off the coupler seems to help. I may be brave and show putting it back in. The nut on the drive shaft I've loosened at this time. Since everything's held securely, I put a bar under here against the detent arm, and this one was tighter than my other tractor, but was able to loosen it, and with that support, and the yoke then came free too. At this point, I'll rotate the shaft again, and again we can hear the grinding noise, especially on the rear bearing if I push backwards first. Pulling forward, not as bad. So, pretty sure we're going to find a pitted bearing on the transmission drive shaft. The next video will be down to business of removing more important parts. I'm leaving out the normal wrench work. So first I'll support it under the drawbar to remove the wheels and the wheel centers because they're heavy, supporting it out here. And at various times I have the front of the frame supported underneath the between the frame and the axle to keep that stable as well. But supporting there, removing the wheels, sewing down to the final drive on each case, and I'll have the fenders off. I'll have this PTO engaging arm out of there for the mower, and the seat will be gone, so I can put my cherry picker in here to support the transmission. And first of all, we have to take the final drives off, and the next video will have the drawbar off at that point too, to take the final drives off with the center part of the frame supported under the remaining U bracket of the drawbar with some other redundant blocking for safety. That'll be what's next. So to bring you up to date, as I said, I'm skipping all the normal nuts and bolts removal parts. The fenders are off, and anybody doing this knows that aside from fine thread hardware on the drive shaft, there's lots of fine thread hardware over here to become acquainted with. I've disconnected the brake clevis here and moved the brake shaft away on both sides because when we take the final drive off, we want to go straight sideways with this and not get hung up here. I was curious what was going on for state of affairs in the transmission gears. The shifter assembly with the 4 bolts out, the yokes just disconnect from the collars straight out from the side, so that's not a complicated piece to deal with. The gears in this 1945 vintage tractor in the 11,000 serial number range look in respectable condition for its age. And now I think I will, I think I already talked about removing the yoke and the drive shaft nut there. The seat's off so I can put the cherry picker in. Jack Krieger's book cautions that the final drives are heavy and not likely to be dealt with by hand, but I've done this before and it's possible with some precaution for me to get it off by hand. I'm going to try and be careful not to damage the pan and the drain plug in the bottom, which I have not removed in this case. Previously I'd taken it off so I could sit it down on the gear. And then later we'll show that these guide pins are in here so that once the final drive shafts are out, we'll go in and pry the transmission off the 2 dowel pins, which in this case are not very deep in the housing, so it shouldn't be too hard. And that's why I have the guide pins. There's some wiggle room required at the bottom to move the differential housing out of the banjo. There are no dowel pins on the final drives. They are only held in place by the hardware, and so I'll now work at demonstrating taking this side off, and assuming all goes smoothly, I won't be showing the other side. The brake, the dry brake, is going to come with this and the drive shaft. Once again, as I had seen in my other tractor, we have remnants of rodent nest in here. The light's not good enough to show in this case. I'll get a light and show it in a minute. So this may be typical. How a mouse gets to the bottom of the drain hole in the banjo housing and gets up in here, I don't know. But this is the kind of situation I found in my other tractor. Lots of contamination in there, reason for rusty parts. In the final drive, to get back to the repair situation, the dry brake is there. On the higher serial number tractors after 1943, the brake shaft has a rod that can be disconnected, as opposed to the 1941 and 42 version where the engaging rod was riveted right to the band. So that's a way to tell the vintage of a tractor that has no serial number plate. The newer tractors, the rod is a 1/4 inch rod, whereas the first ones was a 5/16. So my brake band looks as if it's got some thickness to it. My shaft has barnacles and green manure stuff I need to clean out. Once I get the brake shaft out, it'll be interesting to confirm if the final drive shaft has any end play. It should not, and my observation so far is these final drives are quiet, so I don't intend to take them apart. Here's a better look inside the transmission. I was rotating it earlier from the final drive and no significant noise from the differential drive shaft or parts there. Again, without the light, pushing rearward on the top shaft, pulling forward on the top shaft. So once again, pretty sure we got a pitted bearing on the back of the transmission drive shaft. That's it for now. I'll take the final drive off, and then demonstrating pushing the transmission and differential forward out of the differential onto the guide pins and then hoisting it out of there. That's it for now.